South Africa earlier this year. Mandela was too ill to meet with him.
In 1990, then Secretary of State James Baker was the first high-level American official to meet with Nelson Mandela after his release from prison. Secretary Baker is with us now from the Baker Institute at Houston's Rice University. Good morning.
Good morning, Charlie.
Mr. Secretary, tell us what it was like when you met Nelson Mandela that first time. What were your impressions of him? How did he surprise you?
Well, my impressions of him were that he was a man of endearing and enduring dignity, very soft-spoken, but very committed to the revolution that had been the focus of his adult life. I was also surprised, quite frankly, by the kind words he had for the last apartheid president of South Africa, F.W. de Klerk. In that meeting I had in March of 1990, it occurred, as a matter of fact, at the independence celebration of the independence of the state of the government of the country of Namibia. Mandela said, "I have read F.W. de Klerk's speeches, and I feel like I'm dealing with a man of integrity." I'm not sure they'd met at that time. In fact, I think they had not. But the two of them cooperated to see the peaceful transition of power in South Africa and the end of apartheid in South Africa.
Secretary, you've compared Nelson Mandela to the founders of our own country. You've compared him to Washington, Jefferson, Adams. Why?
Well, because I think he's a man of that significant greatness, if you will. I met with a lot of people during my tenure in public service, and I met with none who deserve the appellation great any more than Nelson Mandela. I think he was an icon of human rights. He was an icon of freedom. He was an icon of reconciliation and forgiveness, if you will, having forgiven his captors of 27 years. And I just think he was an inordinately special type of leader. He was one of the few leaders that I can remember who made the successful transition from being a revolutionary to being a statesman, and he was indeed quite a statesman.
Mr. Secretary, you said that F.W. de Klerk said to you that I'm probably going to be the last white president, and there was no doubt in your mind that he might have been talking about Nelson Mandela. I want you to talk about that for a second, if you could, and what you see as the future of South Africa without him.
Well, I think that it was quite startling to me, actually. I left that meeting with Mandela in Windhoek, Namibia, and went to Pretoria, the capital of South Africa, to meet with F.W. de Klerk. And the only discordant note in my meeting with Mandela there in Windhoek was that I was going to meet with de Klerk. And, of course, Mandela had just gotten out of prison, and he was disappointed that the American Secretary of State would be meeting with the apartheid president of South Africa. He thought it was the wrong thing to do. But we were of the view that we could constructively engage with that president in order to encourage him to change and to in effect give up power and opt for a majority rule. And that's what he did. I went from Windhoek to Pretoria, met with F.W. de Klerk, and at the end of our meeting, he said, "I'd like to have a private conversation with you, if it's all right." And just the two of us went into another room, and he said, "Mr. Secretary, I am going to be the last white president of South Africa." I thought that was a rather startling statement, that he had not said that publicly before. And he and Nelson Mandela worked to bring about peaceful change under the most difficult of circumstances there in South Africa. What is the future of South Africa without Nelson Mandela? Well, I think a lot of the groundwork has been laid by him and his followers with the ANC. And I'm optimistic, frankly, about the future of South Africa. There are a lot of things that need to be done economically, of course, but at least there is now freedom and a form of democracy there in South Africa.
All right, Secretary Baker, we thank you. It is now 8:10. It's time now to check your